Good afternoon, Cabs. How are you?
I'm all right. It's sunny, which is nice because I feel like it's just been like rain, sun for like forever. Where is our summer? We are recording this in July, mid-July. So if you're listening a bit later, that's where I'm coming from.
with work, humans
Human
outside labouring away on scissor lift cranes. So if you hear a cherry picker, go.
That's it. This is a working building, folks. Yeah. As ever, there's going to be lots of noise.
but anyway, apart from that, welcome along and welcome, dear listeners. It's another week and another episode of Absolute Scenes, the podcast whose head is often turned by creativity, even when sliding to the DMs of another art form, but tries its hardest to remember that you, our listeners, are always 100% our type on paper. Can you tell I've been watching way too much Love Island? I am Andy Barton, and joining me as ever, and always able to give so much Casa more, is Gabrielle Shepherd.
Oh, you charmer. Hello, everybody.
I did originally write an introduction that used the word Riz a lot.
Can you get away with that?
No, I then checked my generation and deleted
I don't think we can try, but I remember when my parents used to try and use words when I was a teenager and I was like, nah, mate, no way.
Gabrielle, what are we talking about this week?
Oh, we have such a good one this week. So this week we have an incredible guest called Chris Cox, which a brilliant... I mean, when we asked him how he defined himself, he didn't really give us an answer, but he's in the world of magic and mind reading. Yeah. I've seen him live before. You've worked with him.
I have, yep.
But neither of us are in the magic world at all. I don't really know anything about magic. So this was so fascinating to me. I was quite nervous going into this interview because I was just like, oh my God, what if I don't know what he's talking about? But turns out he's a massive theatre nerd. Which was so incredible and makes so much sense with why he's the type of performer he is and the entertainer that he is, because his craft is just like incredible.
I think it's interesting when, especially with some of the people he talks about that he's worked with and he knows. I'm going to let you listen to the interview to find out who those people may be. And you will know them as well. But yeah, I'm very much sort of like the fact that his sort of like performance background, or at least the genesis of his what would then become his career, started in potential sort of like theatre and performance.
But he also works extensively in theatre now as well, not as a performer, but as like a magic consultant and trick consultant, which, how cool. No. Like, what a way to like bridge the gap between the two mediums.
And I think Chris's skill set, I mean, so I've worked with, Chris and I met last year when we were working on a show together. I was an assistant director on the show, and he was the magic consultant on it. And but Chris is his sort of background, but also his skill set is not just around being a performer and an illusionist, a magician, or a magic creator, but also the fact that he's produced many things as well.
Yeah, he has a background in radio.
Yeah, like
BBC One radio.
Yeah, like Chris Moyles, Matt Edmondson, those
Bezzy Mates.
Yeah, which is huge. So, and it's like, and I think this is something really important for me as an ongoing and learning creative, especially like, you know, still learning on the job,
forever learning on
the job about what I want to be able to do and what I want to know in and around this industry. So one thing we haven't spoken about actually is, this is actually going to go completely a different way.
Here we go. All right.
So one thing that I did fresh out of graduating of drama school was I was an assistant director on feature films. So
were you?
Yeah. We're not talking about this.
Maybe.
So I was the third AD on several feature films, and then of which several on Netflix at the moment.
Just a little plug there.
and a second AD as well. So and then a couple of feature films that never saw light of day.
Sometimes it's better that way, though. I think.
No, these were actually good. I was actually a bit gutted. It was because the feature film, especially low budget. So low budget feature films tend to be £1 million plus or minus.
Yeah, that's barely anything.
250,
Yeah. I could do, £1 million.
So that's the
nothing.
budget of £1 million, roughly.
But for a film,
and it can go anything up to, I mean, it's sort of like changes, but it can also go up to like what is classed as a low budget feature film. It can also go up to say maybe like 5 million as well.
Wow.
10 starts to get into sort of like the mid indie sort of like stuff.
There's a cherry picker.
Yeah, nice thing. Cherry picker. Cheers. So on the low budget ones, what can happen at the front end? You've got the production can happen, and it can be, it could be filmed overseas, or you can have a fairly big sort of like big rigs and like big plots to do the filming, but it can sometimes fall out at the back end. They can run out of money quite quickly.
Okay.
Which is what happened on a couple of the ones that I worked on. But anyway, when I first started I graduated as an actor, but before anyone really cared who I was, and
it takes time, people. It takes time.
Yeah, it does. About 18 months at least.
I'd say 10 years.
Yeah. I worked as an assistant director, and I loved it, and it was great, and I learned so much. Like especially when I became a second AD, and I was working on call sheets for like 13 hours a day. I love a call sheet. The amount of information that's on a call sheet,
tasty. Nom.
And I think especially second AD, so your first AD is basically your assistant director on a feature film or TV show who runs the show. So they're
like organising everyone.
I mean, Gabrielle knows this because
sorry,
she's been there.
If I didn't, it would be a problem if I didn't.
Yeah, I'm not telling Gabrielle here. I'm telling you, the listeners. But your first ADs are the ones who are they're sort of like running the show. They've also done all the schedules. They've done loads and loads of work before the first camera even rolls. And films will not happen without a first AD. They know the timings of everything. At least they have under their timetable, know how long they want things to happen for. They know when something's then going to move from its location. They know what actors they want on set at any one time. They also have pre-planned when an actor is going to be what we call in the chair.
They're a bit like a stage manager for films, aren't they?
Yeah.
That's the vibe.
Yeah.
But different, obviously.
But weirdly, what gets weird is because they're called a director, but they have no creative control. So in theatre, assistant directors and associate directors tend to actually have some creative input. Be it you could either like run rehearsals or you help running lines. And sometimes some directors in theatre will ask their ADs, what do you think we should do here? And what do you think we should do there? On films, no. That is not the place for an AD. So that's what your first AD. I mean, I'm sorry to any first ADs who are listening to this, because obviously your job is far more involved than the very brief outline I've just given. But that's to our laypersons. That's what that's involved in. Your second ADs is more office based, and what they are doing is that they're organising the actors and actresses and performers. And who are coming onto set, like they're making sure that the cars are going out to go and pick everybody up. They're taking all the phone calls when people get stuck in traffic jams or people are suddenly sick or blah, blah, blah. But they're also dealing with everything, all of the information that needs to go onto a call sheet. And they're doing that call sheet right up until wrap time. So they're doing it from as soon as the doors are unlocked on all the offices, right from the beginning, through to then having to write and keep that information right up. And you do it a day in advance, so you do it with a day's grace.
Yes.
And it's like for second ADs, it's like really long hours. Third ADs are back on set. They're sort of like, that is then, you're basically the assistant-ish to the first AD. And you have a set of, I mean, what people would term as runners, but you're sort of like the assistant.
Team leader.
And the third ADs will then sort of like assign, what we call the the sort of like the other assistants to be telling people to be quiet. They also sort of like gather up all the supporting artists or extras, you may know them as, gathering them up, putting them into a position. And again, some different film sets do different things. Some film sets, a first AD will be in complete control of all of the essays. Other film sets I've been on, I've had a first AD go, yeah, you deal with them. And then I'm having to give direction to 14 sort of like a crowd of 14 people on a film set.
Luckily, you've got directing experience, so you're fine. You are a director as well.
I think this is what they want me to do. Different sets do different things depending on budgets and time and that sort of stuff. So that's what I used to sort of like do. I never got to first AD because I just didn't do it for long enough. And you need a lot of experience. And the first ADs out there, honestly, like hail to all of you, because the amount of work that you put in on films and TV shows is absolutely phenomenal and incredible.
Yeah.
And
how does that relate to Chris Cox, Andy?
Oh yeah, so it's really about the...
That was an excellent tangent, but this is fascinating, and then I was like, what's that got to do with Chris?
So Chris's experience is around his skill set of not that it necessarily being a producer on a radio show helped him become a magician. That, as you'll hear, that started way sooner than working as a producer. But you can hear when you speak to him, when you see him, you can see that these skill sets of having, and he goes into this as well, about having a sort of regular job, at least in sort of connection with the entertainment industry, like I do, and also like
we all do.
We both do, very different ones, but like we both do, can feed creativity as well as keep you grounded within the industry as well.
Yeah. I think that's a great note to jump on over to Chris now then.
Yeah, I'm so sorry because that did not go the way how we planned.
No, don't apologise. That was brilliant. So we hope you enjoy this. For me, it was fascinating. This fascinating interview with Chris. And yeah, enjoy.
Thank you for sticking around. We are now joined by today's special guest, who I met last year working on a project that involved ghosts walking through walls, lamps floating on stage, and burying a man alive to then have him reappear a second later from a bed. You may remember him from such TV shows as BBC Three's Killer Magic and Heston Blumenthal's Recipe for Romance. He's a former radio producer, having worked with the likes of Chris Moyles, Matt Edmondson and Colin Murray, but now you find him amazing audiences across the world, having starred in the West End show Impossible and most recently The Illusionists. He's so good that one publication said, and I quote, "does tricks that would make Jesus proud." It's Chris Cox!
Hello! I also play Broadway, but I don't like to mention it.
That is true, actually. Yeah,
Well, we are in the presence of a legend.
I don't like to mention it.
No. Don't worry, we'll cut that bit out.
Yeah, it's fine, please do.
Yeah.
How are you, sir?
I'm delighted to be here. Thanks for having me. It is an honour and a privilege.
Oh, I mean,
wow.
reciprocated.
Yeah,
likewise,
thanks for coming.
It's good. We all had nothing else going on. Might as well
Yeah,
do this.
yeah, very unemployed. It's fine.
And doing absolutely everything we can to try and get employed. So, which is why I do.
How's
this
that working
podcast.
out so far?
All right, middling.
It's a fair to middling, isn't it?
Yeah, but we're getting there.
We've all
It's
both
all right.
got good stuff.
I feel that vibe.
Have you got any things?
That horrendous sort of like, so what are you up to now?
Yeah, we do. No, I was going to say, have you got any coping strategies that you use alongside
Here's a coping strategy I use, which has proved very handy. So as you mentioned, I was a producer at Radio 1. And I was there for 10 years. And when I left Radio 1, I'd just done my first West End run. And I had I think I was doing a run in Mexico, don't ask. And then a UK tour. And I was like, okay, that's probably enough work for me to give up the actual day job and salary and think I'll be okay doing this. And then that UK tour finished and I had nothing. And for about 6 months, I had nothing in the diary. And there was a point where I was like, have I made the wrong choice? But what I did during that time is I taught myself to be a better cook. So I got really good at knife skills because I'd buy a load of onions and just chop them. And
just for hours.
Yeah, literally for hours. I'm like, what else am I going to do all day? I completed Netflix. And so that's my coping strategy, was to learn to cook.
Chop onions.
Yeah,
specifically.
Onions, knife skill. I think if you can get good knife skills, all your home cooking's so much easier.
Did you learn like Bishop's trick in Aliens?
No.
Where he does
What's that?
Have you not seen? Have you seen the film Aliens?
No.
Have you seen?
No, I must. I feel like Aliens is a film I feel like I've seen, but I have no memory of
So
seeing
Lance
it.
Henriksen, he does this when they've all woken up, and Lance Henriksen, who plays Bishop, the android, he does this trick with the knife where he's like.
The 5-finger fillet.
Yeah. Oh, that's
what it's called.
Is that what it's called?
Yeah,
That's
I
that.
just did last year. I consulted on Tambo and Bones, Theatre Royal Stratford East, which is an
Amazing.
incredible
Nice.
play. And as part of that, they had one of the actors was doing the 5-finger fillet.
That's
I was
cool.
like, all right, that's so. This was the pitch they gave me. They were like, there's this thing we need to accomplish. Can you do it? Because I do magic consulting.
Yeah.
So it's like 5-finger fillet. I was like, yeah, we can do that. And he's like, and then what he does is he stabs the knife through his hand into the chair. And I was like, yeah, okay, that's all right. And then he picks the chair up with a knife through it in his hand. And on the call, I'm like quickly going through potential methods. And I was like, yeah, that seems all right. And then he pulls the knife out of his hand and the chair falls to the ground. I was like, yeah, okay. Yeah, I think we can do that. And then when I got actually into development on it, I realized that every method for each part of it cancelled out the other method being able to work. So, for example, a knife sticking through your hand to then hold the chair in the air, everything in that is designed to make sure it all stays together.
Yeah.
And the next thing is it all needs to come apart quickly.
Yeah.
Oh my
But it
God.
was a really fun little project with Olivier Award-winning director Matthew Zia, who is an excellent egg.
Lovely man.
Who's amazing at everything he does. And it was great fun. And eventually we solved the problem.
Oh, well done.
I mean, yeah.
Or the many problems that had to be solved for what is like, that's the ludicrous and joyous thing of theatre. It's like, that is what, 20 seconds of the play?
Yeah.
And the amount of time, money and effort
Weeks.
that went into making that happen.
But that moment must have been like incredible for just the whole thing.
Yeah, it's just like, it's wonderful when those bits, particularly when you do magic, so I'm a magician, obviously. And when you do them in plays and people, they're not presented as tricks, they're just part of it. And you can it just allows people to lose themselves more in the moment and have those kind of shock, wonder, fear, excitement, childlike delight at that moment and just like create real life special effects. Yeah, it's a real joy.
Yeah, it's incredible.
So we so what we try. I mean, this has gone very well. So
I mean, we've
far.
already
We what we do is we always start. We try and start with an icebreaker question, which we haven't told you about.
No, okay.
But I
So-
zoomed in with a question anyway, so sorry.
No,
about
yeah,
that.
it was fine.
It's been
That
beautiful.
was the pre-show.
Yeah,
We're now,
yeah.
Yeah, we've done the prologue. Valjean
Yeah.
stole the loaf of bread. Let's
Yeah,
get on with it.
let's go.
Exactly. So it's a would you rather, and it's so this week's icebreaker question for you is: would you rather stop time but never know the time ever again, or be able to teleport but not know where you ended up each time you did?
Good question. Thanks. So recently I was doing a gig on a cruise ship. And we were up near Svalbard at the top near the Arctic Circle, and it was
Polar
midnight
bears.
sun.
Oh, wow,
So the
yeah.
sun didn't set. And I'd finished my show, and I'd had something to eat, and I had a little drink, and I was chatting to someone, and then I looked out the window, I was like, yeah, at that point, if you could have told me any time, and I'd have gone, yep, that's the time. And it was about, I think it was maybe like 1 a.m. And if you'd have said it's 11 in the afternoon, I'd have gone, yep.
Wow.
It was so weird. So I feel like I'd probably be good at knowing the time, even if there were no time. And being able to stop time is useful. I'm also thinking about how I can use this for subterfuge. So I feel that it's more useful because I can have
evil or
yeah.
good.
Oh well, then never mutually exclusive.
Yeah.
Every hero is their own villain, and
Yeah.
etc. Blah blah
Amen.
blah. So I think I'm gonna go for time, thanks, because I worry about the lack of control of knowing where I'm going to turn up. So it seems sort of pointless.
Yeah.
Where
Fine.
stopping time means I have more control over that, and eventually I'll just work out what the time is, or just create my own time. Cox time.
Cox
Yeah.
time. You heard it here first.
That thing about that's sort of interesting. Do you think that's that idea of sort of control that you have? Has that always been part of you, and what may have fed you into becoming an illusionist, a magician, or has that evolved over the years?
That is a very astute question. I feel like I'm on a therapy couch.
That was
Because
off the cuff as
yeah.
well. That was very good.
the
Andy.
reason I find it interesting is because I don't really think of myself as control. I had an Edinburgh show I did called Control Freak. And then the main act I do in the big kind of West End Broadway, I don't like to talk about it, touring shows is a thing called Control Chris Cox.
Oh.
And the premise is, it used to be called Taskmaster until the TV show Taskmaster came around and I
Damn
renamed
it.
it. But the premise was, it started as an Edinburgh Fringe trick where I like the idea that if you go like to see something, you go to a concert or something and you're hoping they'll play a particular song.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I don't want anyone to leave what I'm doing disappointed. So if you want to see me do something, write it down And then I have a big thing of things people want to see me do. And then I think that you think about the thing you want me to do and I'll do it. So you can literally control me with your thoughts.
Love it.
And the question is, am I controlling as a person? I don't think I'm that controlling, but I'm a planner. I like to plan. I like to know exactly where I'm going to do, what I'm going to do, and my alternates, which I think come out of doing what I do as a performer. I often think the reason I get to do the big gigs I get to do, Broadway, don't like to mention it. Sydney Opera House, don't like to mention it. I didn't like to mention that one. Is I don't think they pay me to do the trick well, because that's a given. They pay me not to screw up the show if it goes wrong.
Oh, that's really interesting.
Which is a huge skill in itself.
Yeah, and it does. And there's so everything I do has variants of what might happen here and how will we fix it. And, you know, so it started off as 3 alternates, and now I'm on to like 9 alternates because other things appear. So I think that, you know, it's like if I'm planning a holiday or something, I will have so many restaurant options and my 1, 2, 3 top choices, and I'll pre-book, and like everything will be pre-planned. So yeah,
Do you love a spreadsheet?
Love a spreadsheet. Yeah, I
Great.
do love a spreadsheet.
Great.
Yeah, I suppose I have control over my planning. I like just doing things. I always feel like if you're going to do something, you might as well put the effort in to make it the best version of it.
Yeah,
can
no,
be.
absolutely.
So how do you feel about surprises?
I like a surprise. Yeah, I'm up for a surprise.
But when you're in control, you want to be like prepared.
Yes, yeah. If I'm
Fine.
doing something, it's like if we're going somewhere for a day out, it's like, okay, I'll prepare what we're going to do so we have the best day out possible.
Great.
But I then will get a bit stressed if people don't follow my plan. So that then we have an incredibly stressful day out. So I'm like, well, it's 11 o'clock and we should be feeding the penguins now.
I mean, I'll be honest. I am as a person who's been in a former disciplined service. I too have that as well.
Okay.
So when it comes to sort of time management of being somewhere either on time or this was the itinerary that I thought that we were going to go by, or at least this was the itinerary I had in my head.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I hear you. I respect
Absolutely.
that.
I think there's flexibility. It's good to be flexible around it. And I think the flexibility comes from me having lots of ideas of being like, okay, well, now if we're not going to do that, that's fine. We can come back and do that later. Or we just won't do that. And plan. Just plan.
Yeah.
Do you're talking about surprises? Which
Why? What have you got? What lined up?
Well,
Who's going to burst through the door?
One thing I'm
It's always Mr. Blobby. Always the surprise is always Blobs.
That's one
creaky
Mr.
bottom. Sorry, I'm going to go down a route there. I don't know if I want to go down. The when you're watching anything, so any fiction, when you're reading fiction, or you're watching a TV show or a film, or even another play, I guess, do you find yourself working out any twists before, or do you allow yourself?
I allow myself. I'm very good at being an audience.
Lovely.
Great.
And my wife actually is very good at, particularly watching stuff, at preempting what's going to happen. But I sort of switch that part of my brain off because I like the surprise. And like the upsetting thing about magic is most people get into magic because they love magic, and then when you get into magic you learn how it's done, so therefore the love of magic goes because that surprise is rarely there. The only times it gets me is I tell you the time where I was really I always loved the work of Martin McDonagh, the playwright. And The Pillow Man is kind of like a real formative. I saw it while I was I think I was at sixth form, and I went to see it at the National with Jim Broadbent and David Tennant, and it just totally changed my life. And it came to Bath on tour, I remember, and I saw it like 3 times the same week, and then saw it recently when it was in town.
Yes,
and I feel it's probably aged a bit now as a play, and the shocking stuff
Hasn't
of it.
Everything.
Yeah.
Haven't we all?
Yeah, we've all aged. That's life. But in loving McDonagh's work, I then saw Hangmen when it was at the Royal Court, and near the end, I was like, I wonder if this will be the same twist as The Pillow Man. And it was. And I was like really annoyed at myself for preempting what it might be, and then it being that. I was like, that is a shit. I would have really enjoyed that if I hadn't preempted it.
I often try and preempt because I enjoy trying to figure it out, but then I'm often wrong.
Which
is
that's
great
nice.
because I get best of both worlds, which is nice.
I like trying to speak to people. It's never so great actually speaking yourself, trying to overhear people after shows. Working out methods.
Oh, really?
Because most of the time they're wrong.
Yeah.
Sometimes they're bang on.
Yeah.
But normally when they're bang on, they then one of the things you do as a magic creative, for want of a better phrase, is
that how you define yourself? Magic creative.
I sort of creative who dabbles in magic. Yeah, magician, magic creative, something like that. I don't really have a title. But one of the things you do is sometimes the actual best method is the most obvious method.
Yeah.
But what you do is you then work on making ways to prove that that's not how you're doing it. So I like it when someone gets the method bang on and then instantly discredits it because of the reason that I put there to help discredit it. I'm like, yes.
I love that.
But often as well, you get a totally wrong method, but you're like, that's a really good method.
I'm going
And
to
then-
take that for next time.
Yeah, there's definitely things
Damn,
I've
that's
used.
cool.
I've overheard someone say it as a possible thing. I'm like, nope.
But
Yeah.
thanks for doing my job for me next
Yes,
time.
That's exactly it.
That's amazing. So obviously you were talking about kind of like losing the shine of the magic because now you know how to do
Yeah.
it. How did you get started in magic and mind reading? Like what was your
A really good question. I was 11 years old and I was at home here in just outside of Bristol in Nailsea. And I got this letter that was delivered by an owl.
Of course.
7 years old, Hogwarts,
Of
Hufflepuff and Crowd.
course.
No, the real answer is sort of the same answer every magician will give. Is I got a magic kit when I was a kid, liked magic, kept doing it. But actually, I loved performing and loved magic and did magic as a performance thing. Would get magic kits and do them. But went to like Saturday stage school here in Bristol and would do the pantos, like be the kid in the panto at the Hippodrome, and
Great.
would call into TV shows and radio shows and get on them. So just always like performing and can't act, dance, or sing. Therefore, magic and specifically mind reading, because really mind reading is 90% performance. I always think 10% method.
Yeah.
So therefore that. And I went to uni here at Bristol. I studied drama. I originally auditioned for drama schools and was midway through but soft what light through yonder window breaks soliloquy at Mount View. I vividly remember it. Being halfway through that soliloquy and in my head going, oh, I don't want to be an actor.
No, this is awful.
Yeah.
I hate this.
That's
Yeah,
fair.
exactly that. And then realizing, I want to be a performer. So I used my student loan in my final year of uni to go and do an Edinburgh show.
Great.
That went well, kept doing Edinburgh shows. And, that superpower you have when you're young is that you don't take no for an answer and you
Have
just do
hope.
stuff.
Yeah.
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 Hope,
full of
hope's
hope.
not matter.
Hope
Yeah.
and joy.
And also
energy.
no fear of it going wrong, right?
Yeah.
Or it not working out. So you just
you're
do
like,
it.
I've got forever.
Yeah.
So it's fine.
Exactly that.
Yeah.
So I was lucky, which meant by the time the first kind of big West End magic show was casting, I'd done 5 Edinburgh shows and I toured those shows and I'd done a TV thing and I'd done this just because
You
I've been
wanted
doing it
to.
since I was little. Yeah.
Yeah.
So did that answer the question? I suppose.
No,
it did.
that's
well done,
great.
me.
That's amazing.
And
That's
if
great.
you were, obviously, I'm sure there are plenty of people who love your work and would like to follow in your footsteps. So
There it
is
is.
there, don't do it. But is there any advice you would give to anyone like wanting to step into the world of magic? Or...
I think magic in particular, I think the problem with magic is, so I don't think of myself as a magician. I am an entertainer / performer who does magic.
Nice.
And I think there's a big difference because like I'm a member of the Magic Circle, and genuinely the reason I'm a member of the Magic Circle is because there was a book I wanted to read, and magic books are really expensive, and it was cheaper to join and read it in their library than buy the book.
Wow.
So that's why I'm a member.
Wow.
Yeah.
But it's very insular magic, and magic becomes about this little sleight or this or that, and it never enough becomes about performance or presentation or audience and entertainment. And the magic world care a lot about exposure, but don't care about theft or copying and just lifting wholesale. So all that stuff frustrates me. So my advice would be that your world needs to be more than magic.
Yeah.
So I think I'm good at what I do because I have done it a lot, but because all my references come from elsewhere.
Yeah.
Not from magic. And it's kind of like I will normally start backwards. It's rare that I'll start with a trick. I'll start with an idea and then work out how to do it
Great.
down the line. So yeah, my advice, I think, if you want to get into being a magic performer, then it's everything around that which makes you a better magic performer. And you have to know all the stuff in and out. And it's all like the other thing with magic is it's very inherently not a collaborative thing where all the best stuff is. Because you kind of, when you get into it when you're young, it's sort of inevitably a solitary thing.
Yeah.
And actually, all my best stuff comes out of collaboration.
Yeah.
And I think all the stuff I learned from being a producer of the radio and stuff was that, and all the stuff I do in theatre now is that all the good stuff comes out of collaboration. You can't create anything in a vacuum. So build your team of experts that you can turn to and chat with. And
is that other magicians, or is that
it's a little bit other magicians. If I'm on a consulting gig for a show, there'll be magicians that I'll get on board to help me with areas I don't know enough about.
great?
It'll be friends who are creative and working in other areas. Normally there'll be people who are directors, people who are writers, sort of anyone and
Who might have an
everyone.
insight.
Yeah, exactly. I think insights can come from all sorts of places. Plus my notes folder on my phone.
Yeah.
Whenever there's an idea, it goes in there, and eventually I'll be like, oh, that could be useful.
Yeah, great.
having also having worked with you as before and known you for a little while now, it seems that you say yes because you think you can or know that you can do a trick, which I love and I think is amazing. have you ever had to say no because you haven't been able to work out how to do something?
Yeah, there's a few things. So I was very early on in the development of Magic Goes Wrong, which is by the Play That Goes
Yeah.
Wrong guys. I had a meeting with them about working alongside them as the magic consultant on that show. And it was clear quite quickly after that interview that I was like, I am not the guy for this.
Oh, interesting.
And I would love to do the gig, but my expertise at that point didn't lie in enough areas. And if you bring me on board, I was just going to have to bring other people on board
Fair.
to do that. And ended up putting them in touch with Penn from Penn and Teller, and that relationship came out of that.
Great.
So yeah, I sort of, these days, I think I'm very good at saying yes and also very good at saying no, because I think there's no point in doing a project and doing a bad job on it because you don't really know. Or going into it being openly asking, I'm not entirely sure how we're going to do this, so we need to put this workshop in or this or that. But there's normally always a solution, and if you surround yourself by clever people, something clever comes out of it.
Do you feel like you've got to a point now where you can be more selective with what work you take?
No, I'll take all the work I can.
Please, so employed, so unemployed. Help me.
Always say yes, creatives.
And Chris's website is
magiccox.com, spelling correctly.
Great. And I guess, like, obviously your whole life is magic. How often do people sort of just ask you to do magic tricks in public?
Rarely, because I'm good at giving off a vibe of don't ask me.
Yeah,
Nice,
great.
yeah.
Great.
And I think I've never been a magician who does magic for the sake of showing off. And it's never been a social crutch for me. And I've never done, I've done one close-up gig, which is a lot of magicians' bread and butter is close-up gigs, corporate events, weddings and stuff like that. You walk around. I did once and hate it. I don't like, the reason I perform on stage is because everyone sat quietly facing the front, listening to me louder than them with my pre-prepared excellent material.
Yeah, right.
So I don't like it. I don't like performing it in environments which aren't the environments I'm in control of, weirdly, and used to. And I've got stuff I can do, and I like, if it's weird, like if I chat to someone about magic and I can see they really just want to see something, I'll normally just be like, let me show you something. And I think that is a better way to come at it, because then it's in a point of sometimes it can be seen as a challenge. And it's like, it's just an environment I don't particularly enjoy doing. And there's stuff I can do, and it also depends sometimes on my mood.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Fair.
And it's also like, I feel like I always like we'll do meet and greets after the show sometimes, and I always feel like I'm a disappointment because you've seen the best version of me on stage, and everything I can do is designed for that environment. Yeah. And now, on stage, I can high five you and tell you your star sign and your date of birth. I can't, and so then I'll meet people after the show and I'll high five them and I'll be like, "What's my star sign?" I'm like, "What?"
No idea who you are, sorry.
And I've got material designed around that, but it's that thing of like sometimes because you are playing a version of you. People therefore forget that isn't actually you. And I get away with it much more so than like someone like Darren, who is the best at this art form that there ever has been and ever will be. But Darren's life is saddled with being Darren Brown.
Yeah. It's funny. I have comedian friends or acquaintances who have similar answers to that question as well, because getting expected to give a joke, and it's being saddled with that sort of thing.
Well, I get that. Sometimes people will be like, "Oh, you'll just do a performance for us," things like that, and it's like you have to judge it specifically on each project, right, and decide if it's going to be something exciting for you or help someone out that you love. But it happens a lot. My partner's a puppeteer, and they're always like, "Oh, come and do some puppetry for us," and he's like, No, thanks. But it's funny how people not in the entertainment industry sort of are like, "Oh yeah, because you love it, you'll just do it."
And you go, "Well, that's my job actually."
I'd like to be paid. Thank you.
It's like I used to do a thing when I started off and would do charity gigs, and still do charity. I don't like to talk about my charity work. But
I'm
you do
very
charity
charitable.
gigs, and what I realised, a lot of the psychology of what I do isn't so much about the actual psychology of how the trick works. It's the psychology of how audience behaviour is. So that's the stuff I'm interested in, break down a lot. And I did a couple of these sort of charity gigs where I just like, "Oh yeah, I'll happily do it," and just was treated like a second thought. And like, and, I'd be like, oh, can I get some water? And it would be a big to do. Or can I get somewhere to get changed? And I'm like, okay. And my thought on it was like, okay, well, all the waiters are being paid, and it's like, so why aren't you paying me? And I'm like, okay, well, it's because I'm donating my time to your evening. It's fine. But therefore, I feel like,
can I be hydrated? Thank you.
So now my thought when I do it, those charity gigs, the thing which changed it for me is I go, yeah, this is my fee. This is what I charge, and I will donate that fee to your charity.
Lovely.
Great.
So now
I'm a
they
professional.
put me at the value that it's at, and then when I send a rider and ask for this stuff, it's no longer hold on, you're like, no, this is a professional thing, and that way it just sort of makes everyone's life easier, and I can do a better show.
That's a really good tip.
That is a really good tip.
Juicy.
That is so good.
Yeah, that's really good. And would you have like a contract in place for that?
Yeah,
as well?
I'll do the same contract as I would do for any kind of corporate gig,
but just a donation.
And then and I will invoice you accordingly, but it will be a null invoice because I will minus the original fee.
And the only thing changing is really just the psychology of how
just changes how they view it.
It's incredible.
That's really good.
And also, you can put your fee as massive, and they think you're great.
Oh yeah. But then if they at some point need you can be like, yeah, that is my fee.
That is my fee. Yeah, and suddenly everyone's a winner.
If you could make anything or anyone disappear, who or what would it be?
Are you an option?
I'm bored now. I'd like to go. He's not a diva at all.
When I wrote that question, I genuinely didn't consider that to be an answer.
It's the obvious answer. Everyone's thinking it. Of course, I've already had what I wanted to disappear happened at the election, etc., etc. You know what? Actually, here's a answer from the top of my head. I do a lot of traveling. It's the joy of my job and the downside of my job. I love getting to travel. I hate having to travel all the time and be away from my family and stuff. But I flew back in last week, and I tell you what I'll get rid of is people with terrible luggage belt etiquette.
Yeah.
So I travel with a lot of cases, at least 2 big cases, often 4. And I am very good at travel. Got my systems. I know what I'm doing. Get to the luggage belt, and all these idiot holes standing right next to it. And then, so I'm always I do stand at the back. My cases. Here's another pro tip: if you travel lots of cases, stick neon gaffer tape on them. Yeah, because you can spot them from miles off. It's like neon yellow gaff on all my stuff. I'm like, there it is. So and then they look at me like I try to get my thing and they don't move, and it's like I'm the problem. I'm like, no, step back.
Your suitcase isn't here yet.
Exactly.
It will come.
And if you stood back, I wouldn't be hitting you with the case. And look, I've got 4 coming out now. And
so get on.
Yes, so I'd get rid of those people.
I think that's good.
Yeah,
that's.
I wouldn't get rid of them. I would. Yeah.
I like this. Tune in to next week's episode of Room 101.
Yeah.
And speaking of disappearing things, what would be your favourite gig or trick or project that you've ever done, and does it involve disappearing or is it something else?
Oh, good. Oh, lots of good questions. The answer I often give, and it's when you say it, I think it's because it's the gig where I'm just like, wow, that was fun. Is I got to do a one-off at Shakespeare's The Globe.
Oh, nice.
They had a kind of a thing for one evening where they had some magicians on, and just that thing of like, you'd never, and I feel like I've been very lucky in my career in doing the venues and the shows I've done, or the shows I've done in the venues I've done. I'd have never played those venues on my own. And being aligned to a show that gets to play those venues is incredible. And that, particularly the Globe, I just remember it being like a venue I'd never thought I'd get to play, because why would I? I already have said that during a soliloquy. I was like, this
I do not want to be an actor. No, thank you.
But also, it just felt like I was being hugged by the audience the whole way through. It's an incredible room to play.
It's beautiful.
Because it just feels unlike, and it feels really special. And there's a few of those where I'm just like, they're all very special. And that's me doing my acts. There's not really any disappearing.
And is that like mind reading when you say your act?
Yeah. So my act is kind of the thing. I call my act the stuff I do in The Illusionists, which is the main show I do now, which are like my 2 big bits of material that I've done in those shows for a decent amount of time now, and they're very good because I've done them thousands and thousands of times. And I also I don't like to mention it, but I played Broadway. But like actually doing the Neil Simon Theatre, which is the first show I saw on Broadway when I was 21. I went to New York, saw Hairspray at the same theatre, and I found the tickets just before I went and sat in those seats. And I was like, oh, this is like, that's like proper kind of pinch me stuff. I am someone who loves, I think my greatest love outside of like friends, family and stuff is is theatre. And actually thinking I've got to play these incredible theatres, and those all of them, like the power. I was the Magic and Illusions assistant on Harry Potter and the Cursed Child for a few of its years, so that was always at the Palace.
Yeah.
And then the pandemic happened. Did you hear about it? It wasn't good.
I think I missed that.
Google it.
Yeah.
Alexa, what was the...
They're going to start teaching that in history classes soon.
They
and
are.
It's going to
to think that my son's going, by the time that he goes to school, that's going to be...
Dad, what was that? I don't want to talk about it.
Well, actually,
Well,
Amy and I are actually all for... do you know what we're going into?
I digress.
But after the pandemic, I got to open a show at the Palace. We did a show called Wonderville, which is a magic show where, because of the way it had been restructured, we were given that room for 6 weeks. And I got to stand on that stage, having spent many days, hours, weeks, months of my life in that room doing Potter stuff, and be like, I put the show together with some producer friends. I kind of hosted the show. I got to stand center stage in that room. And then literally the week after we closed, I was back in there teching Potter, which was reopening.
Mad.
And it was like, I never thought I'd get to ever play that room, because obviously Potter was in
Yeah,
there.
of course. Yeah.
But then to actually have it for 6 weeks and be that kind of center stage thing, that is pretty nuts when I think back on it. But of course, all of that stuff it means nothing, but everything, which is the joy of it.
Yeah, it's funny because you're like,
It's so transient.
It's just, there's some magic sometimes that you find, that you find when you're in a massive space. I don't know what it is. Like, I find it with rehearsal rooms as well. There's just something about the expansiveness of it that makes me feel so like the possibilities are endless.
That's it. All the choices that have been made in that room, good and bad, and I was thinking about like all the players that have played that room, for want of a less idiotic phrase. But that thing of like, I feel like those rooms soak up the history, and you're now part of that. And you know, there are many theatres in Middle America that I played and will never go back to. Not because I'm
I
chased
hate
out
it
of
there.
time. But that idea of like, okay, well, we did the tour date there, and there's no reason I'm ever going to go there again. But to be like, a little bit of me is the laughter
There.
I made, or something is in those walls. And I have a moment every night when I'm on tour, on stage, where it's always the same bit. It's right near the end of the Illusionists. We have a bow, and then we do an encore thing, which is our manipulator act doing some stuff with cards, and you just have to stand and watch them and listen to the music. And I always at that point think about my kids at home, because I know at that point they're in bed, and I just always have that's the moment where I just sort of have a think about that. And I always think that thought possibly like it sort of grounds me in that moment and builds within that theatre, and they're a bit with me. All of that sort of weird theatre-y stuff, but there is something special about a theatre, and I think it is unlike. And like a rehearsal room and stuff, there's history there which is unlike history anywhere
else. So the
else.
people, I think, right?
Yeah.
Like the energy that you get that's not the same with TV or film.
Yes.
Is theatre your favourite medium?
Oh,
then?
100%.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and there's nothing more joyous being in an audience watching something, knowing it's just for you, because it's always going to be slightly different, knowing that, you know, that gasp, that thing, that collective wonder, and that idea of like people getting in sync with breathing and stuff like that is the real magic for me. That and it's a joy doing it from the other side and creating those moments and manipulating that audience to get that and that wow and that standing ovation and this, and like being able to play with it and know how you can create those moments for people. I think it is I think theatre really is really magic.
Would you like to do any more screen work, or?
I have done a bit of TV. I always am fine doing TV. I don't love it. It's a very different medium. I love live stuff, and I feel like TV helps live stuff, and I've not done anything really for a while. There's probably 2 TV performances I've done that I'm really proud of, and the rest I'm like, they're okay for all the constraints which no one will ever know.
It helps you build profile as well in a way that allows the theatre stuff, which, you know, I think a lot of performers feel that they're like, they really want to work in theatre, but actually to get the theatre, you have to have profile.
Exactly. And I think I'll never say never, but it's like, I'm not actively chasing it. And I know some people who are actively chasing it. And also I just think that it's a weird landscape at the minute, and I don't think anyone's commissioning magic shows, and I wouldn't want to do a magic show. I'd like a show maybe with magic's part of it and all that stuff, where I just feel more at home in theatre.
I appreciate that.
Absolutely valid.
So
I think it might be time.
I think it is time. It's time. We're at that part of the show, the apex of the of the interview. So we're going to now ask for your absolute scene.
Okay.
So for everyone at home, this is the our guest's chance to give us their absolute scene. That scene from a film, from a TV show, or even from a play. Maybe it's from a book or a song that gives our guests either be the sort of chills or the inspiration of creativity. Maybe it's the reason that they got into the industry, or maybe it's something that they return to when
comfort and joy in times of hardship.
Things are a little bit dark. But Chris Cox, what is your absolute scene?
think when you just originally pitched this to me, I think the phrase you maybe used, or maybe I took from it, was that something that lives rent-free in your head.
Yes. Yeah.
And instantly, one thing came to mind in that second thing. We discussed The Pillow Man, which for a while was my favourite play and is my number 2 favourite play. However, I bought in, and I hid this on
A prop.
I didn't want to hide it. I bought in the play text for Jez Butterworth's Jerusalem.
Oh my god!
Yes, this reaction.
Yeah.
So I am obsessed with Jerusalem and Mark Rylance. I have seen Jerusalem in its first incarnation before it came back a few years ago. I saw it 9 times.
Yeah.
Wow.
I took, to name drop, I took Tim Minchin to see it. I took Penn and Teller to see it.
Who's that? No idea.
Sat next to Gordon Brown, weirdly, at one performance.
Yeah, random.
I know, all these names. It is, talking of theatre, like, when we were talking about theatre a minute ago, and me, those feelings, like, Jerusalem's the thing that comes into my head. And I think what Rylance does in it is genuine theatrical magic. And I went to see it at the Watermill in Newbury, where Jasper, I forget his surname, played.
Was that the first time?
The first time it had been done outside of, in a professional production outside of Rylance and Ricksworth directing. Jasper Blakely. No, not him. He's a magician, I think. Jasper, I'm so sorry, can't remember his name, but he was amazing. And it made me go, oh yeah, it is the play and it is the writing, but it is also the performance. And Rylance does in it, having seen it lots of times over its run, there was always something different in it. And I constantly hoped it would return. And the fact it did, and Rylance has always said, maybe every 10 years I'd quite like to do it. I want that to be a thing.
I didn't know that. That's really exciting.
And there was a point I heard, maybe you got the answer, there was like, he wanted to take it on tour. And like, Rylance came here to the old Vic. I'm like, bring it here. And I really hope it does, because it is an incredible piece of work, and there aren't enough words for me to describe how it made me feel and how different it was every time, but the same, and how the more I watched it, the more I realized what it's trying to say and what it isn't saying, and what it's about and what it isn't about, and how it speaks to Britishness and Englishness and particularly the West Country where we live, and the tall tales and the magic of theatre, and these people like Rooster as a character who Mark Rylance plays. It's a horrible human. I don't want anything to do with him, but I'm
captivated.
100%
agree.
Shame and like everything about it's so difficult to pinpoint anything in particular about it, but it is true, like for me, true theatrical magic. And it's sort of, I was worried when I went to see it again when it came back after these years, and it's still as incredible a piece of work. And I remember in fact, I'd sort of forgotten about this, and as I picked the playtext out of my book, I found it at the Olivier's a while ago, where Ferryman, Ferryman? Yeah, Ferryman won Best Play, and Jerusalem didn't win Best Play, crazily enough.
Which is mental.
And I went up to...
Ferryman was very good, but I personally would say Jerusalem
is the magnus opus. And Jez Butterworth was at the party, and I've been obsessed with Jerusalem for years. And at that point, it hadn't come back, and I'd been asking everyone in the theatre industry, like, is anyone bringing Jerusalem back? Can it come back?
It needs to happen.
And I went up and spoke to Jez at the party and just said how much Jerusalem meant to me, and he asked me why. I was like, I can't quantify it. And there's a bit, I think Rooster maybe reminds me a bit of my dad, and there's just all this stuff. And we talked for a bit about it, and then he gave me, and I just found it in here, his acceptance speech that he wrote down, which is the acceptance speech he didn't do.
Oh my god!
But he wrote it's an idea because this is.
Oh my god!
And it's in there.
Do you want to read it out? Can we?
You can, yeah.
This is like sacred.
So it says. Dear Jez.
No, he said he'd woken up that morning and he found a letter from God next to him, and that's what this is.
Oh my god, this is incredible. So it's this acceptance speech from Jez Butterworth says, "Dear Jez, this is God. If you win tomorrow, don't forget to say that
Fanangle
from the
hoo-ha
is a
nonsense.
Oh, love God."
Oh my god.
Now, those listening, you may have just heard the actual thing, or you may have heard at the end of that. It beeped out and silenced because you're going to need to check that with your lawyers, because I think that's why he didn't say it.
Yeah.
But there had been a thing around that time in the newspaper where a columnist in the theatre industry had said some questionable things, and it referenced that. So,
oh my god!
So the fact that this was in here, I'd forgotten about that.
That is incredible.
That is huge.
And so I picked up the playtext yesterday, and like the first scene that came to my mind of it is that end scene with Rooster banging the drum, and. One of my friends, excellent stage manager or company manager called Ben Delfont, was the company manager on the last version of the show. And I asked him a lot a lot about lots
Oh my
of
God,
things because of
amazing.
how Rylance changed that performance. And he's like, some nights he'd stand up for it, some nights he'd sit down, and like those changes. So it's sort of the chills that go through the room as the trees sway and stuff. But actually, there are two other scenes which I feel I was like, as I go through, I'm like, oh, it's that, and then I was like, oh, actually, it's that. So there's a scene where there's three actually. I'm going to briefly mention all of them. But there's a scene where Rooster says, he's talking to. There's some spoilers coming up here, but he says to Troy Whitworth, who is his daughter's missing, and he says to him, and Rooster says to him at some point, he goes, he says something like, oh, you're scared. Any father would be. It's not that you're just feeling a bit horny at the minute. And I remember seeing it a few times, Jerusalem, and being like, and everyone, if that's a line in the room. And I remember just being every time like, I don't get why Rooster's saying that. And then one night I saw it again and was like, oh, Rooster's saying that because he's had those thoughts maybe, because she's next to him in the caravan in the next room. And there was nothing changed in it, but I was like, oh, that's interesting. And that was my reading of it for then. And then last time I saw it, actually, I had a different reading of it. But then I listened to a podcast with Mark Rylance, which is online still. So he did an interview at the Wyndham's Theatre. No, not the Wyndham's. The one at Piccadilly Circus. Eros is outside at the Criterion.
Yeah.
When he was in Jerusalem, he did an interview. And he talked about this moment. And weirdly talked about, at one point, he decided that was the reason why Rooster was saying that. So there was nothing different in it. But he had made the decision. And at one point, I saw the play after he'd made that decision, and something in how he said that
just suddenly clicked
with me. And that to me is real mind reading.
Yeah.
That is. So there's that moment, and there's a similar moment where he's his ex-wife Dawn. He says to her, "Look in my eyes," and then there's sort of silence, and then he just goes, "Did you see that?" And there's always a thing of like, you feel like something has happened and nothing's happened. And actually, I was thinking about that yesterday, and I checked the play text, and it just says here, it's like, "Did you see it? Did you see it, Dawn?" And it says, pause, she starts to shake. And you go like there's something that happened there.
Yeah.
And it's what
the
is
whole
that?
thing, the underlying magic of, like, you feel it all the way up to that end moment, which is just incredible.
It is real magic. And then I remember there was like a whole history of variations of that show where at one point they workshopped it with Rooster in a wheelchair because he's had an accident from the motorbike.
Oh, yeah.
And like, how that show would be because of that.
So different, yeah.
But the actual, after all that talk, the actual scene I went for,
first, second, and third.
I'd bookmarked with the piece of paper I took out of here.
But
it's
the sacred paper.
I won't find it now. But I tell you what, it's a scene where Rooster's playing with the kids, and they are playing Trivial Pursuit.
Yeah.
And he is buzzing, and it's always Lake Titty Car is the one I remember. And he goes, there's phrases from Jerusalem I use in my everyday life. One of them is, "You've got your buzzer, use it." Which "You've got your buzzer, use it." And "Show me your teeth, you'll be fine," which he says to his son, which I now say to my kids if they're a bit upset. I'm going, "Show me your teeth." "Yeah, you'll be fine."
Yeah.
Which I love as like an oldie worldy Englishy thing. But that whole scene of him being able to answer the questions before questions are given and give the answers, and they go, "Oh, well, this is nonsense, you've just learned them all." And they're, "Oh, why would I do that?" And to me, that scene is a magic trick.
Yeah.
A, it's the idea, I'm like, oh, that would be a good trick. And B, if I were to do that trick, the method would be, I just learnt it all. Because often the method in magic is you go to more effort than anyone would ever think possible.
Of course.
And that whole like spirit of play and fun, and that kind of, there's such a great section of the show. I'm like, oh, that I think is kind of because it is a trick. I love it. But really, that whole thing just run through my head, and it's rare that a day will go by where I don't think about something to do with it, weirdly.
Yeah.
So in total, how many times have you seen it?
I think I've seen it about 12 times. And that is only because, so it did run at the Royal Court that I saw, and then it did 2 runs in town. And the Broadway run, but I didn't see that. Although I have played Broadway, I don't like to mention it. And then
it had its 6th time he's not mentioned it.
I don't like to mention it. Then it had its big gap, and then it came back. And when it came back, it was announced during the pandemic that it was coming back.
Yes.
Which was the greatest news for me.
I remember I signed up to like the email list and was like, "Tell me when tickets are available."
Straight away. And I bought, when it went on sale, I bought tickets for like maybe 6 or 7 performances.
Wow.
Because I sort of didn't know what my schedule would be. And was like, I would happily see it that many times. And in the end, I only got to see one of those performances.
Right, yeah.
And then I was off in the US for the rest of the run where I couldn't make it. So I saw it 12 times and would have happily seen it more and more happily see it again and again. I think I also have at one point went to the V&A. I went to the V&A and watched the recording of it that they've got.
Why not?
Great.
Yeah.
That is such a good choice.
Yeah, and it's almost talking about Tambo and Bones. Oltz, who did the design for Tambo and Bones, did the design for Jerusalem.
Oh,
The design
and I
is
very
exquisite.
briefly have mentioned it to him, but didn't want to get too
yeah.
far down
like,
that
"Oh my
rabbit
God!"
hole. But the fact they use real trees and the chickens and there's just it.
All the elements of that show are incredible. Like
Yeah.
the one I saw the one that came back because I missed it the first time. But yeah, it's just like every single detail is incredible. And you're right, like that central performance from Rylance is just mind blowing.
It's
And I'd never seen him
otherworldly.
live before either. Like
my
I'd seen recordings
Yeah.
of him. Like I've seen some of his Globe Shakespeare's that is just the way he uses that language is amazing. But yeah, I was just like jaw dropped the whole time. It was incredible.
And his physicality and his like often I think that was the thing with it as well as when I first saw it is the performance sweeps you up in it. And the more I saw it, the more I'm like, oh, this play is incredible as well. And of course that performance exists because of the play. And he wrote it for Rylance and he rewrote so much of it in the rehearsal room. I've done a lot of deep diving on it.
Yeah, this is great.
And it just like, and then I remember that was the first time I'd seen Rylance and was aware of him. And then suddenly, that's the reason Rylance won an Oscar. It's because Spielberg saw Jerusalem.
Yeah.
And was like, oh, come and do movies.
This guy's incredible.
But then, like, weirdly, after Jerusalem, the next thing he did that I saw was back at the Apollo Theatre, where Jerusalem was originally, was Olivia in 12th Night. And suddenly, I would swear Rylance was 7 foot and massive as Rooster.
Yeah.
And as Olivia, I would swear he was 4 foot and tiny. And it's
He's
just
a true shapeshifter.
Yeah.
He's incredible.
And he's when he was here for Dr. Semmelweis, so I got to meet him got to talk to him for a few times as well. And he, it's interesting to watch him and how he watches and reads a room.
Really?
Because he, at least my observations of him, is that he is always observing people around him, their movements, the way that somebody walks in a particular way, the way that they talk. His brain
He's absorbing.
just never seems to, at least when I was speaking to him and when I'd sort of watch him as well, sort of move around in the foyer and just interact with people, that he is always he seems to just be obsessed with the human condition and just obsessed with humans in a very positive way of how we move, how we conduct ourselves, how we talk, and that's as an actor. And it's really for me as an actor, I learned so much in the 6 weeks that he was here just by watching him. Yeah. As not as an actor.
So he was watching people and you were watching him.
As a person. And I was like,
and he was watching you
back.
Yeah.
It was like Inception, Gogglebox, all sorts of squares. But it was like, but I was like, yeah, of course. Why wouldn't I, as an actor myself and a performer, why wouldn't I want to be curious and do that? Because
people watch. I love sitting in a cafe and people watching.
What can I do with my body that completely changes a narrative and changes my story or the story that I'm trying to tell?
Yeah, he is, like, I think the greatest theatre actor of our generation, in my opinion at least. And like you said, like I've heard all the stories here about him, how he, as a company man in a show, and like how he always keeps a box free, which is for company guests and stuff like that. And like idea of like the more I watch him in things, you can sort of start to unpack what I call the Rylance box of tricks of like there's certain speech intonations and like the and the stuff, and you're like, oh, and it never feels forced. And it always like there's always points I'll be like, oh, there's a bit of Rooster there or something, because I sort of feel like I know that character so well. Yeah. But it just feels like, oh, he's figured these things out which make it feel like he's not acting.
That's the goal for every actor, I think, is just to feel like you're a human being just living and just experiencing. You're tricking your brain. And when you can figure he's nailed it.
And like as a performer, the reason I love performing and don't think I'm a good actor is because I'm in the moment and I can't not be in the moment, because what I do is fourth wall breaking. It is performing and involving you. So every night is different because of the audience members I interact with.
Well, you're quite close to sort of improvisation, right?
Yeah, I mean, it is like the whole Control Chris Cox routine is frameworked improvisation every night. Like I know my structure, I know my beats, I know my framework for it, but it's always let's see what's going to happen. And enough stuff comes up regularly that I have moments so like I know what I'll do for that, I know what I'll do for that, but they come out of finding it in the moment. And I think that is, the mark of a fantastic actor is someone who can do that with the exact same or a variation of the exact same every night. And the fact that I saw Jerusalem and all that cast in it, and the changing of cast, it's like every time it felt different and new and fresh. And I think, there's always a point in my head, I'm like, oh, I wonder why they made that choice. I wonder. And that kind of analytical brain of mine, that magic, the working out of magic trick brain, I think part of the reason this lives rent free in my head is because I can't work out the magic trick.
Yeah, I get that.
That's an excellent one to
wow.
That's
Thank
you for bringing that in.
This is going to live rent free in my head for a little while now.
Oh my God.
We are, so we've got one final question to ask you.
Yes.
I say we, I mean, Gabrielle's got one final question to ask you.
Very quickly distance yourself from this question. What is this question going to be?
It's
because it's my,
the thing.
I just love it. So what is the question you wish someone would ask you?
Oh, it's like Control Chris Cox. It's the trick question. I feel like I don't have a question I wish someone would ask me, but what you've done, and I'm very grateful for it, is you've asked the questions that I'm not normally asked. I think maybe you asked one question which I've been asked before, which is the one I have my prepared answer for. I actually gave you a real answer after the prepared answer, which is how did you get into magic and stuff?
Appreciate that.
Because in essence, I understand it that often when I do interviews to promote a show, really journalists, they're not necessarily wanting to chat to me. It's just part of the gig, and I'll get asked the same sort of 6 questions, which is fine, and I have prepared answers for them, but it never really feels particularly fun for me, where the thing I aim for in life, and particularly in shows, is I never say break a leg or good luck, I say have fun.
Nice.
And if I've had a good show, I've had a good show, because I come off and be like, that was fun tonight. And I think the fun always comes from me of being able to turn my brain on to 100% and deal with whatever's happening in the moment. And in this instance, it was getting questions I've not been asked and being able to talk at you about my love of Jerusalem and feel alive again because of it.
I love it.
Yeah.
So
we're very grateful.
Oh,
we're
thank
grateful.
you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Now, if someone would put Jerusalem back on, I think probably we're 8 years away, maybe. 7
From
to 8
the next
years away.
one.
I'll email Sonia Friedman. I'll ask
Yeah. We'll all just like put the feelers out to everyone we know. You know. I'll call.
But genuinely, every's I met for ages, I'd be like, when's Jerusalem come back? You're going to bring Jerusalem back?
when?
Yeah, and every time a new film with violence would be announced, I'd be like, oh, that's another year at least, probably.
Damn it. Thing is, if he wants to do it so bad, he's probably like, in 8 years, I'm not available. Like, because he's got that kind of power. And they know, and also the producers know it will sell out. So it's like a surefire thing.
And I really hope he does tour it, because I would love to follow it around the country and see it in Liverpool, in Manchester, in Brighton, in Bristol, in Birmingham, and see how audiences react in different places to it.
But also to see that character age as well. Like, could you imagine seeing with him at 80 doing it? Like,
because there's 12 years since me last seeing it and seeing it again. There was more than a 10-year gap, and he'd aged in that time. But he doesn't, like, the energy, the physicality was all still there. And actually, that character, the older he gets, the more interesting that character becomes. Because
so, like, you've been in this caravan for a really long time. He lives in a caravan in the woods. For anyone who doesn't know,
and
Jerusalem.
He hangs out with kids and is been barred from every pub in the village and deals drugs on the side. And is a genuine bad egg, but also a good egg at the same time. And the older he gets, the more we see those relationships differently, I think. It was interesting last time in the return of it, seeing the relationship between him and Ginger, who Mackenzie Crook played in the original and came back to play. I go, that relationship, to me, my reading of it and how I saw it totally changed. And Ginger suddenly felt like because Ginger had aged by 10 years as well, suddenly felt like a really sad character. Who's stuck there and hasn't, where Rooster's lot is his lot, where...
I'd love to see them both keep doing it.
Keep going.
That would be so interesting.
And I don't think we've ever had that really with we've had Shakespeare's redone and
of course,
a million times, but like actually to have
but it's always different people. So
but to have that wouldn't
fascinating.
It be, as a study of just the human condition and theatre and like, and the fact that that play was written pre-Brexit. I mean, I should shut up, but it's written pre-Brexit and then came on again after Brexit, and just like what it continues to say by saying the same thing.
Yeah, exactly.
And that is, I think, that genuinely is the magic of it all, is that every performance is different because of our interpretations of it and where we are in the world and where we are in our minds. And, that thing of like, I often hear people say, particularly magicians often say, they go, oh, there's no such thing as a bad audience. Like, there is, because I've 100%. Done it enough to know there is. And also I got a friend who wrote a film which was made just a comedy film, and he saw it, the exact same film every time, and sometimes the things got a laugh and sometimes it didn't. Nothing's changed. And I saw Jerusalem on a wet December matinee, midweek matinee, and a summer evening, and like the reading of an audience and all of that changes every time.
Amazing.
On that note,
Amazing.
Chris, thank you. Thanks again for coming
Thank
in. It's been
you.
an absolute gift.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for everything. And that's us. That's us for this week.
Thank you so much again for listening.
Yeah. We
Tell
will
your friends.
Yeah, please tell
Subscribe.
everyone.
Leave a review. Share it on all the
like
socials.
and subscribe.
Exactly. And if you are travelling at an airport and see some bright neon gaffer tape,
Run
play
away.
nice. Play nice and sort your luggage out.
Take a step back from the luggage carousel.
But on that note, thank you ever so much. We will see you next week and do join in.
Have a lovely week. Bye.
Great show.
You've been listening to Absolute Scenes, written and hosted by Andy Barton and Gabrielle Shepherd.
Produced by Synchron Productions in association with the Bristol Old Vic Theatre.
Music by Brian Hargreaves.
Marketing and communications by Dylan Tozer, Amanda Adams and Gabrielle Shepherd.
Please like and subscribe in all the usual ways, depending on the platform that you're devouring this on.
We've also set up a page on Buy Me a Coffee, where if you feel so inclined, you can become a supporter of the pod and help us and our guests. But honestly, we're really glad to be in your ears, so absolutely no pressure.
And tune in next time, where it will be much the same, but different, like each of my visits to my barbers.